Keto and other low-carb diets are exactly that. They vastly reduce carbohydrate intake, which has two responses. One, ketosis, where the body starts using fat as its primary energy by breaking down fats to produce ketones that your body can use for energy. Two, gluconeogenesis, where the body just burns fat by saying gluconeogenesis, because it's such a thick word that just saying it over and over burns calories and the fat just melts off. Well, that's one theory. The other theory is that gluconeogenesis is where the body creates glucose from non-carbohydrate sources because some cells just can't work without glucose. Keto isn't the only low-carb diet. Some other popular ones include Atkins, Modified Atkins, South Beach, and many more. There are variations on each of them, and the main differentiator is that there are different ratios of proteins, fats, and carbs. But for the purpose of this discussion, I'm going to stick with just plain old ketogenic diet, aka keto, though with all of them, the goal is to nudge your body into ketosis. And that can lead to a reduction in body fat and may also have some other health benefits depending on the person and the circumstances. It takes a few days to enter ketosis, and doing so is often accompanied by what's become known as keto flu. Cramping, diarrhea, or constipation, dizziness, food cravings, increased thirst, irritability, nausea, stomachache, trouble falling asleep, trouble staying asleep, and of course our old friend, brain fog. I tried going on a very low-carb, high-fat diet of my own several years ago, and the keto flu was real, but the sensation for me was something I described at the time as carb-starved. I started adding more fruit to my diet, and so at that point I was high-fat and high-fruit. It felt pretty good, and really I think that's a rough description of how I've eaten ever since. Basically, I'm not afraid of carbs nor fat. The important thing to me is that I eat high-quality carbs and high-quality fat. Cabbage stir-fried in coconut oil is not the same as French fries soaking in trans fats. But that's just me, and I already told you to never trust anecdotes. Not even mine. I'm a foodie and a YouTuber, and there are already way too many foodie YouTubers out there dispensing nutrition advice, and, well, do not trust foodie YouTubers to be the final arbiters of solid nutritional advice. What does seem to impact everyone is that it really matters what you replace your carbs with. There's a thing people call dirty keto, where they replace the carbs with processed junk. This can lead to multiple disconcerting markers, including elevated LDL and blood pressure. This is like the keto version of what I call French fry vegetarian, where people stop eating meat only to replace it with unhealthy junk food. Different people seem to have different responses to keto. That may be a function of the way they implement it, or it may be more a matter of the fact that everybody's body is different, and I'm all but sure that it's some of both. Some of the ups and downs of keto are weight loss, yes, but especially short-term weight loss, which could very well be water weight. It's hard to stick with and stay on the wagon. Some especially strict interpretations of keto can lead to social isolation, similar to some of the elimination diets we're going to discuss in a moment. Some evidence suggests that keto is good for the brain, while other evidence suggests that it might be bad for the brain. You know what the heck, it's just your brain, right? Keto may improve type 2 diabetes, at least in the short term, while the jury may still be out on the long-term impact, as there is evidence that a lot of people's blood sugar sort of rebounds after an initial drop. But keto can be really problematic for people with type 1 diabetes because they can experience hypoglycemic episodes due to a condition known as ketotic hypoglycemia. So people with type 1 diabetes maybe should just avoid this type of diet. The keto diet was originally designed for children with epilepsy, and it appears to be effective in reducing seizures. The keto diet might also help reduce tumors. In cases where people implement keto by increasing their meat consumption, they can experience increased LDL cholesterol, possible kidney problems, and diminished gut flora. Overconsumption of processed meats may also increase risk of cancer. Adapting to ketosis can sometimes lead to bone problems. Keto can lead to nutrient deficiencies and especially deficiencies in vitamins and minerals found in some of the plant foods that people commonly cut out. The bottom line with keto for me is not simple. It seems like it really works well for some people while other people run into serious problems, though I don't know how much of that is a matter of poor implementation. So-called dirty keto is definitely not a good plan, and there are so many opportunities for a person to get that wrong by eating a lot of really unhealthy things like processed meat and junk food, simply because they comply with the carb counting. One common perspective from health professionals is that it can be a good short-term plan for weight loss and managing type 2 diabetes, but they seem a bit mixed on keto's impact as a long-term diet. I tend to agree with some of the fundamental points of the keto plan, but for me, it tends to take the form of just limiting refined and high glycemic carbohydrates while not being averse to eating healthy fats. So might this work for you? Yeah, I think so long as you do it properly and take care to avoid dirty keto. You also might want to think twice and do some really thorough research before deciding on keto as something to do longer than a year or so. Better still if you consult with a healthcare professional. Even though keto may or may not work as a long-term diet for a lot of people, it might still work as a short-term plan. The jury still seems to be out on that. I also think that the initial stage of the keto diet is similar enough to an elimination diet that they share some of the same risks, such as becoming deficient in certain nutrients, as well as the social isolation I just mentioned. One very popular elimination diet is the Whole30. So let's look at that as an example. The Whole30 has been popular for a few years now, but my first issue is in the fact that you often hear people calling it the Whole30 diet, and that is a little concerning. A true elimination diet is more like a test than a diet, and should probably not be thought of as a way to eat for life. I know I've said so many times that I tend to not trust elimination diets, but the truth is that my main concern is mostly in how people misuse them. As soon as someone says they're doing the Whole30 diet, that's an indication that they may not be taking the right approach. A lot of people seem to mistakenly think of elimination diets as long-term eating plans, and that misconception is way too common. Just to be clear, elimination diets, when interpreted and executed correctly, involve omitting certain foods for a limited amount of time and then reintroducing them while observing your body's response. And too often, people just eliminate foods or even entire food groups and stick with that as their new eating plan. That's not how this is supposed to work, and it's not very wise. So at first blush, my initial reaction to someone who wants to try an elimination diet, or that they're cutting an entire group of nutritious foods, is that I have concerns, but that's largely because too many people don't seem to do it properly. In the case of the Whole30, put simply, you start by eliminating a list of foods from your diet for 30 days, and then you gradually reintroduce them to see what changes you experience. This isn't the same as, say, forever swearing off of vegetables or grains or dairy or whatever else. Other folks do the opposite and kind of boomerang by overeating the foods that they reintroduce. That can exacerbate one of the common issues with Whole30, which is that these major and sudden dietary changes can cause big fluctuations in a person's blood sugar. Another risk with all elimination diets, as well as many super restrictive diets, is nutritional deficiencies. Some of the foods on most of the omission lists aren't particularly good for you in the first place, like processed additives, so losing those is fine. I mean, more than fine. It's probably good. But there are other things like whole grains and dairy that can provide important nutrients. As you remove those nutritious foods from your diet, you need to make sure you're still getting all the good stuff that your body may have relied on them for. If you eliminate grains, make sure you're still getting enough fiber and vitamin B at all. If you're currently eating a lot of dairy, make sure that when you remove it that you're still getting all of your calcium, fat, protein, vitamin D, and potassium. If you don't take care to make sure you're still getting what your body needs, you can run into trouble. Another concern is that the Whole30 and other elimination diets can sometimes lead to what's known as orthorexia, an obsession with clean eating, or a belief that you have to be absolutely perfect and eat only the approved foods all the time. Orthorexia can lead to nutritional deficiencies, malnutrition, and social isolation. It's not uncommon for people to take their obsession with clean eating too far and miss out on nutrients that they don't even know they're not getting enough of. They not only miss out on that, but they often miss out on social connections because they feel like they can't let their hair down and have a little fun with their friends once in a while because their self-imposed food rules are too strict. It's also not uncommon for people to sort of kick the can down the road with symptoms they're having, so instead of seeking help from a qualified health professional, they just stop eating grains and legumes or something because they think that's going to fix everything. Food is super impactful, and for sure, some foods can have serious adverse effects on your health. But like I said last week, you are not just a diet. You're a whole person. You shouldn't ignore serious symptoms just because you think you can fix everything by cutting dairy. Similarly, there can be a placebo effect. People might really believe they feel better when they stop eating grains, for instance, but sometimes that's really subjective. It's important to keep records and to quantify everything. Eliminating an entire group of foods can have significant reverberations throughout your person, so don't do it casually. Some people have been known to use Whole30 to sort of jumpstart their health or to lose weight or otherwise use it as a quick fix. That's not its intended function. It's a diagnostic, not a treatment. Using a diagnostic tool as a treatment is like reading eye charts instead of wearing glasses, or just looking at your gas gauge but not filling your tank. The bottom line to me is that it seems like Whole30 could be useful if done properly, if done not as a long-term diet but as a test with ample consideration given to making sure you replace the nutrients that you might currently be getting from grains, dairy, and legumes. Don't do this casually. Keep good records and follow the plan. I think if you were to do this just willy-nilly, you could possibly hurt yourself. So don't think this is a quick fix nor a long-term eating plan. This is a tool to help you learn about your body. Another of my red flags that Whole30 raises is the way that it's become a marketing term and a profit center for people ready to cash in. Just like some of our other favorite buzzwords like gluten-free or keto or Atkins or paleo, some food manufacturers are plastering their packages to make sure you know that their product is Whole30 friendly. Try to remember that processed food is still processed food, regardless of whose plan it fits with. Most of what I've just said can apply to most elimination diets in general. They're tools, not lifestyles, and if you're going to do one, make sure you follow the plan and make sure you're not missing out on the nutrients you get from the foods you eliminate. And the longer the plan lasts, the more careful you should be to not undernourish yourself. A close cousin to elimination diets is the gluten thing, because there is a lot of misunderstanding on this. While gluten intolerance is a very real thing, most people can eat gluten without incident. Gluten-free is not inherently more healthy for most people. About 6% of the population has legitimate gluten intolerance. That's not the same as celiac disease, which accounts for about 1% of people. Sadly, you often hear people talking about gluten intolerance as if it's some kind of hypochondria that people make up. You often hear people saying that if you don't have actual celiac disease, then gluten is fine, but that's not true. People with honest-to-God gluten intolerance outnumber celiac patients 6 to 1. Next time you want to judge someone for saying they can't handle gluten, try to remember that you actually have no idea. I have friends who have actual celiac disease, and I have friends who are legitimately gluten intolerant. What I don't have is any reason whatsoever to decide that I know better than they do what they can or can't eat. I have no qualification to judge, and neither do you. Do not trust foodie YouTubers to be the final arbiters of solid nutritional advice. Another thing I don't have is gluten intolerance, so for me, gluten-free means very little. I have good reasons for avoiding white bread, but gluten is not one of them. I've tried going off of gluten a few times, and in each case didn't notice any change whatsoever, but that's just me. Some people notice a profound difference when they cut out the gluten, and that's totally valid. But if you're not gluten intolerant and you don't have celiac, don't make the mistake of thinking that gluten-free is the same as healthy, and don't make the mistake of thinking that you have any place deciding how it works for other people. You gotta have nuance, and especially when it comes to nutrition, but it matters because you matter, and you are made out of food, so I hope you're using good ingredients, quality ingredients, because you make the food, and then the food makes you. My next video is going to be on paleo, and then after that we're going to look at plant-based diets and what Mark Hyman calls the pegan diet. So it's going to be vegans and pegans. Isn't that cute? But for now, it's time to wrap up this video. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you next time. Ciao.